Another day and another transfer portal update for Tennessee. Tulane receiver Chris Brazzell was on campus for a short visit. What did he have to say? I spoke to him, that and a whole lot more. It's your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Again, we surpassed 10,000 subscribers on the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. Can't thank you enough for that. I'll eventually put out a graphic on Twitter whenever the graphics department wants to make me one, but I do want to celebrate that with you guys. Can't thank you enough. For making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Got a fun show coming up today, and it's this episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Latest in the transfer portal, what I know, what I've been hearing about Tennessee transfer portal, and when in the world will Tennessee finally get its first commits out of the transfer portal. Let's look ahead to 2024, the quarterback position around the Southeastern Conference. Is it going to be better or worse than this past year? And then we'll finish off a Wednesday show as we do every single Wednesday with Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday. All right, so I had a chance to catch up with wide receiver Chris Brazzell from Tulane. His name is entered the transfer portal. He was on campus for a brief stay, really just a couple hours, to be honest with you, Monday evening, and then he left Tuesday morning, and had a chance to catch up with him before he left campus. And I think he really enjoyed it. Again, this is the Tulane receiver he spoke on yesterday's show. Had a really nice season. He finished with 700 and, let me find it right here, 700 and some odd yards, 5 touchdowns, 44 receptions, 711 yards, 5 touchdowns on 44 receptions. He said, hey, I really enjoyed it. Loved the city. Said the stadium was probably the best stadium that he's ever seen in his life. I thought that was kind of noteworthy. I asked him what Tennessee's pitch was to him, and he said, the track record kind of speaks for itself. Look at Jalen Hyatt winning the Biletnikoff Award. Look at all these receivers that have gone on and playing in the NFL right now. He said the proof's kind of in the pudding with what Tennessee, and that was their pitch to him to come and play, for the University of Tennessee. He raved about Nico Iamaleava. This is a quote. You can read the whole thing over at volquest.com. I wrote it up yesterday. Said, I feel good. Nico Iamaleava, they probably have one of the best quarterbacks in the nation right now. With him being the anchor of the ship and me being me, I feel like the sky could be the limit. He goes on to say later on, what are some of your lasting thoughts about Tennessee? He finished up by saying Nico again. Nico's the anchor of the offense. That's a big factor for that too. He's a freshman, so it's not like I'd be coming somewhere where he's leaving or they're getting a transfer quarterback. He's going to be here for numerous years. Remember, Brazzell has 3 years of eligibility remaining as well, so that's big. He also said SEC, that's the biggest thing for me. It just means more. He said that kind of in a laugh, and he said with Tennessee, it's a pass-first offense. Then he went in and spoke about Nico again. Ask him where else he's going to be visiting. He was leaving Knoxville on Tuesday, heading to Utah. He had already been to Houston, and if you keep up with what's going on in the coaching carousel, Tulane's head coach was hired at Houston, so obviously got there and decided to recruit his own guy again once he entered the transfer portal. So went to Houston, came to Knoxville, going to Utah, and I believe that Washington and Colorado are also going to be in that mix as well. So going to see a lot of campuses, going to see a lot of teams here pretty quickly this week. Said he didn't have a specific timeline, but he wants to have a destination by the first of the new year. So, we'll be tracking that. That is Chris Brazzell, from Tulane in the transfer portal. And you can check out my full interview with him over at volquest.com. Tennessee is also looking at another defensive lineman. This coming from Texas A&M, a guy that's in the portal, Fadil Diggs. I believe Fadil Diggs will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. He's a defensive lineman, got a lot of versatility to his game. I think he's more of an edge player. At 6'5", 260 pounds. That's a name that Tennessee's trying to work to get to campus. We'll see as the week goes on if Fadil Diggs can get to campus. And once he gets to campus, then it kind of feels like it's real, right? Tennessee's in that one. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know any of the other schools that are in on him right now as I check my notes. But again, trying to work to get him to get on campus. You look at his stats. He started a lot of games, albeit a couple of injuries, but he started a lot of games each of the past 2 seasons. And his stats look like this in 2023, this past year: 12 games, 36 tackles, 4 sacks, 11 TFLs. In 2022, he had 28 tackles, 5 TFLs, and 3 sacks. He forced 3 fumbles in 2022 and blocked a kick all the way back in 2021. So a very productive player from this league on the defensive line that Rodney Garner could make a whole lot of use for. In terms of name, image, and likeness, though, for me, my opinion, just using him as an example, like a defensive lineman, sure, there are go-getters, and I'm not saying that James Pierce doesn't deserve money or Tyler Barron doesn't deserve money or something, but, man, you play a lot of guys on that defensive line. So when we talk about the allocation of name, image, and likeness resources, that's a fancy way to say all that, talk about money spending. Man, I wouldn't throw a whole lot of money at one person on the defensive line. That's just me. But again, you've got to have that dynamic. Like, I mean, James Pierce has earned it, right? Tyler Barron, honestly, not for what he was probably asking, but like Tyler Barron deserves some money because, I mean, those guys are super impactful and among the leaders in the Southeastern Conference. So again, watch the name Fadil Diggs from Texas A&M. Holden Stays, again, he was on campus this past weekend for an official visit, former Notre Dame tight end. He was at Washington, I believe, yesterday, and now Georgia has entered the party. So when we're talking about that pecking order at tight end, right, it's really first one that wants to commit, come on down. Holden Stays, Jordan Dingle of Kentucky, Bauer Sharp of Southern Louisiana. You know, with Georgia entering the picture for Stays, I'm not saying the ship has sailed by any means, but I mean, that's Georgia. So that's going to be a tough challenge. And if I were Tennessee, I would be calling up Jordan Dingle right now and you know, making the case that he can't refuse. That's just my opinion. Let's go to the prep level real quick. A new name that Tennessee's coaching staff has been on the road this week and some stopped by and visited with. Murad Watson is his name. He is currently a Kent State commit. And you're listening to this, you're watching this right now saying, oh, that's where we are right now, committing or recruiting commits from the schools of likes of Kent State. I get it. I mean, I understand that a lot of times. Plus, it's really late in the cycle. But this guy is coming along. Now, is he having a late cycle push like Arian Carter? No. I mean, Watson's not, you know, being fought over by Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. No, that's not the case. But Syracuse is jumping in. A lot of other Power 5 programs are jumping into the mix here late. I do not believe that Murad Watson's going to commit to or going to stay committed to Kent State. I don't think that's where he'll sign. I think he'll go somewhere else. Could it be Tennessee? Well, we'll see. If you look at his On3 recruiting profile, he's not even rated. You know, no stars, not even rated. A lot of that could also do with an unknown prospect, didn't camp, not on anybody's radar, books, or anything like that. He's got really good size, 6'3", 285 pounds from Irvington, New Jersey. And I sat down and watched his huddle tape because I was kind of curious. Because, I mean, I saw, and, you know, that's first thing I thought of, right? Oh, Kent State. Okay, well, how good is this guy if Tennessee's going to be intrigued with him? I watched 5 minutes of his huddle tape, and I was really impressed. And, again, I'm not a coach. I'm not an evaluator. I like to think I know football, but, again, I'm not trying to be an evaluator or a coach. I know what I'm not. But I was impressed with him, man. Got extension on his arms, eyes in the backfield, finding the football, ripping away. I mean, he's strong, but, I mean, on that tape, he's the strongest and best player on the field, right? So he would bull rush through a defensive or an offensive lineman to get to the quarterback. Yeah, that's whatever. But my takeaways was his extension that he would get when taking on a blocker, getting rid, rip, swim, whatever the case is, eyes in the backfield, finding the football, and going to make a play. That was things that kind of jumped out to me with his athleticism. And again, he's already got a college body at 6'3", 285 pounds. So that is the latest on what I'm hearing, what I've seen in the transfer portal. Again, a wide receiver that Tennessee's all over is Chris Brazzell, but going to Utah right now, already been to Houston where his former coaching staff is, Colorado and Washington also in that one as well. So hopefully Tennessee will get a commit out of the transfer portal in the next day or two, in my opinion. I do want to share this stat with you before we head to the reset. Bill Martin, SID, football SID over at Tennessee, had this tweet on Tuesday afternoon. From 1950 to 2020, Tennessee football had a player produce a 3,000-yard plus season of offensive total yards only 5 times. Let me read that again. In 70 years, 1950 to 2020, Tennessee football had a player produce 3,000 plus yards of total offense in a season only 5 times. Since Josh Heupel arrived in 2021, the Vols have done it 3 straight seasons. Dating back to 2007, his quarterbacks have done it 13 times. So obviously, the players at Tennessee with Josh Heupel's been here for the 3 straight seasons that have accumulated over 3,000 yards plus of total offense. 2021 and 2022 was Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton this past year. Thought that was really interesting. That's only been done 5 times in 70 years prior to Josh Heupel. 3 straight years a player, his quarterback, has produced 3,000 yards plus of total offense, which means passing and throwing as well, or passing and running as well. So I thought that was really interesting. And dating back to 2007, his quarterbacks have done that 13 times. Thought that was a really, really cool stat. Wanted to bring it here on the show for you guys. All right, when we come back, let's take a look at those quarterbacks, not just at Tennessee, but around the Southeastern Conference for 2024. That and more coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. Do want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. As the weather gets colder, the NFL stays hot at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel today, there's no better time than right now. So much going on. NFL football, college football, bowl season. It's upon us, right? You've got NBA. You've got college basketball. You've got, NASCAR starting up in the month of February. I mean, I just say that because that's what I like to do during NASCAR season. You've got a whole lot going on. Baseball's right around the corner. And you can check it all out at FanDuel Sportsbook. Spreads, player props, over-unders, totals, and a whole lot more. You can get it all at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn for $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. So I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I mean, we're right in the middle of the month of December, silly season, when roster management's at an all-time high, COVID seniors coming and going, players declaring for the NFL draft, players entering the transfer portal. You got bowl season coming up, starting this week, actually. Tennessee, of course, playing on New Year's Day in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa in Orlando, Florida. But you're figuring out what your roster is going to be for 2024. For a guy who hosts a daily podcast on one subject, and that's Tennessee football, I love the month of December. There's always something to talk about. Numbers been great. Can't thank you enough for that. But there's never anything where I'm having to really research. And I mean, I always research. I spend about an hour before recording the show, kind of compiling some notes and everything. But my point is, in the month of April and May, man, I'm reaching. It's tough, right? You figure out how good you are at this whenever you're trying to create some content, out of that. My point is, I started thinking about what next year could be around the league, the SEC, specifically the quarterbacks, because it all starts with the quarterback position. We've seen how teams need a quarterback to go. We've seen how teams need a quarterback to win in the college football playoff era. And so a couple years ago, man, the quarterback position was hot in the SEC. I mean, you had Matt Corral a couple years ago. Of course, you have Bryce Young. As recently as last football season, not 23, but 2022. Before that, you had Mac Jones. Before that, you had Tua Tagovailoa. Before that, you had Jalen Hurts, and that's just Alabama right there. But also, you had Will Levis, who was at Kentucky, who's an NFL starter right now. You got tons and tons of talent from around the Southeastern Conference at the quarterback position. And this past year, I mean, you have the likes of, KJ Jefferson, who's we'll get to here in a moment. Devin Leary came in and played at Kentucky in place of Will Levis. Spencer Rattler, who's going to be an NFL draft pick. Will Rogers, who's been in this league for a long time. So the SEC's had a lot of talent at the quarterback position the last couple of years. It's always had talent at the quarterback position, but specifically the last couple of years. So when thinking about 2024, who are the projected quarterbacks right now? A lot of this is still to be determined, but who are those projected quarterbacks right now for the Southeastern Conference? Well, let's start with Tennessee. We know the answer to that. That is Nico Iamaleava, #1 overall player in the On3 rankings for the class of 2023, 5-star, Mr. NIL. He's got a lot of nicknames, but that's Nico. We know that's going to be Nico at Tennessee. So, okay, off to a good start. Again, we're abolishing divisions here, for the SEC in 2024, but I'm going to go in order because that's how I remember every SEC team because I work divisions. Let's go to Vanderbilt. No clue who their quarterback's going to be. Now, Clark Lee's going to be on the hot seat for sure. Sam Pittman will be on the hot seat. Billy Napier's going to be on the hot seat. There's some other coaches who are going to be on the hot seat, in my opinion, in the Southeastern Conference next year. Shane Beamer's probably going to be on the hot seat. But for Clark Lee, you just got all this backing, this financial backing for the collective, and that made national headlines last week. Is that going to be enough to compete, in the SEC next year? No, it's not. What's it going to look like in 5 years? I don't know. But what I do know right now is Clark Lee, after picking up a little bit of momentum in 2022, took a major step back this past year, went 0 in conference play, and all 3 of your quarterbacks who were on roster got out of here. The best players from a 2-10 season, 0-8 in the SEC, got out of town in Nashville. A.J. Swan, no more. Ken Seals, no more. So for Vanderbilt, I don't know at this point in time. Has anybody transferred there to play quarterback yet? I don't know. Move on to South Carolina. Spencer Rattler is gone to the NFL. And right now, unless you get a transfer portal quarterback, you're looking at highly coveted recruit that came in there, Lenora Sellers. A lot of people in their version of the orange and white game, their spring game, like Lenora Sellers an awful lot. Right now, he's got the keys of the Corvette over there. Well, the keys to the Cadillac maybe, or whatever you want to call it over there in Columbia, South Carolina. Brady Cook, to my knowledge, is going to be the quarterback in Missouri next year, right? He's not going to be a super high draft pick if he went this year, so I don't think he's going to do that. Why would you enter the transfer portal after the year you just had at Missouri? So Brady Cook can come back. He'll be one of the best quarterbacks in the league entering 2024. Graham Mertz announced a couple weeks ago that he's going to return to Florida, and I was hard on Graham Mertz all offseason, and sure, he has more talent around him at Florida. They had a horrible year. Graham Mertz had a pretty good year. He was doing things he's never done at the Power 5 level as a quarterback. He was not turning the football over. He was completing passes at a much higher completing percentage than he was at Wisconsin. He had a really good year, and he's going to return for Florida in 2024. Kentucky says goodbye to Devin Leary, okay, and you're going for the 3rd straight offseason. Well, technically 3rd offseason in their last 4 offseasons, because Will Levis was there for 2 years. You're getting a quarterback from the transfer portal, this by way of Georgia backup quarterback, former 5-star Brock Vandagriff. What can he do? I don't know. We ain't seen him play outside of mop-up duty. Don't know how good of a quarterback he is. But just like Nico, he was highly coveted, highly talked about, 5 stars, one of the top players in the country in that cycle. And Kentucky's in pretty good position, so we'll see what he can do. But as far as name recognition, it's a good job by Kentucky. And then Georgia, Carson Beck technically hasn't made a decision yet. And I didn't realize this, but I was kind of doing some research before getting on and recording this podcast. Man, there's some analysts out there, NFL draft analysts, that believe he can be a day 1 pick. Goodness gracious. I didn't think that right now, but if he could be a day 1 pick, he needs to go. But a lot of people think he's going to return. And a lot of people think he's going to return and still make, in terms of NIL allocation, what he would make in his first year of an annual rookie contract. Not the total contract, but the first year. Darnell Wright's, first year in terms of his $20 million contract was like $4.85 million. The 20th overall pick, the wide receiver from Ohio State, his first year of his rookie contract was like $2 million. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that want to donate to Georgia football right now because it's king of the castle. Of course, it didn't make the college football playoffs this year, but nonetheless, won 27 straight games, back-to-back national champions. You're going to take care of your quarterback, but goodness gracious, is that worth it? It probably will be for Georgia, so I'm expecting Carson Beck to be back. So, in the East, that's not going to be the East next year, you got Nico, Tennessee. Don't know about Vanderbilt. Lenora Sellers at South Carolina. Brady Cook at Missouri. Graham Mertz at Florida. Brock Vandagriff at Kentucky, and Carson Beck likely at Georgia. And again, all this can change, guys. Transfer portal still open, and decisions could still be made. Let's go to the West, which is not going to be the West next year. Alabama, Jalen Milroe expected to come back. Not bad. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart. Again, I don't think Jackson Dart's made an official announcement, but the Grove Collective signed him to a new deal, it looked like, and Everybody's talking like he's going to be back, so I assume Jackson Dart's going to be back for Ole Miss in Oxford. So I'm going to go with that, but not bad. Okay. Then you have KJ Jefferson, who, when they announced the hiring of Petrino there as OC, which is going to be super awkward because Sam Pittman's on the hot seat. KJ Jefferson, there were rumors that he entered the transfer portal, comes out on his Instagram story, says, "I've not made up my mind yet." That was at the time of this recording about 2 weeks ago. Looks like he's still there. So I would assume that as of right now, KJ Jefferson's going to play there. If you're going to enter the portal, why hadn't you already? So we'll say for now KJ Jefferson. If it's not going to be KJ Jefferson, say he does enter the transfer portal. Arkansas did go out and get Boise State starting quarterback Talon Green. But I mean, who the heck is he in regards to this conversation right now? Garrett Nussmeier is going to be the quarterback at LSU, right? Am I missing something? Nussmeier is going to be the quarterback at LSU. At Mississippi State, it's going to be Blake Sharpen, correct? The Baylor quarterback that threw for a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns in 3 seasons at Baylor. You've got that. You also have Mike Wright at Sharpen. You've also got Mike Wright, who once upon a time was at Vanderbilt. He's still on roster. He started a couple of games this year in place of Will Rogers, but that was just a cluster. It was so bad. Will Rogers enters the transfer portal. He's falling from Washington to Mississippi State. How in the world does he still have eligibility? How in the world does KJ Jefferson still have eligibility? John Campbell's about to play his 7th year. I don't get it. Keenan Peely, I know he was a little different because he went on a 2-year mission trip, but Keenan Peely literally was a part of the class of 2016. Oh my gosh, college football is such a headache and so glorious at the same time. A&M is going to be Connor Wagman, right? I mean, he's still there. Max Johnson left, went to North Carolina. I think Connor Wagman's still the quarterback at A&M, right? And then Peyton Thorne, until they bring in another transfer, I would assume Peyton Thorne's a quarterback at Auburn. So the quarterback position was really, really good a couple years ago. And it was okay this past year. Again, you had Joe Milton, who's going to be an NFL draft pick. You had Brady Cook, who's going to be an NFL draft pick in 2 years. You had Gray Mertz, who was improved. You had Carson Beck, who was really, really good. Spencer Rattler, who was better than all of them at one point in time this season. Devin Leary, who did some things, didn't live up to hype. Jalen Milroe, who was great. Jackson Dart, who was great. KJ Jefferson, who was injured. You had some good play in the quarterbacks in 2023. But I thought from name power, it took a step down. But this group right there that I just went over, boy, that's not a whole lot to brag about right now. And, of course, these guys will step in and make some plays and will become household names, and we'll talk about them. And, one of them might go to be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy next year. A couple of these guys will be playing in the expanded 12-team playoff. And so we're going to know who these guys are. Right now, Nico might be one of the best, in my opinion. I mean, he's behind Milroe. He's behind Dart. He'd be behind Jefferson to start out. Probably behind Nussmeier to start out. Probably behind Cook to start out. But, I mean, how long will it take for Nico to surpass some of those guys? I don't know. We'll see. And I'm excited to see. We'll talk about Nico a little bit with Josh Ward coming up. That's next here on Locked On Vols here for a Wednesday show. But before we get to Josh, I want to remind you guys about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn's got a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is super easy when you have all these qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. They even have launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. It's Wednesday, so time to check in with our buddy Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday here on Locked On Vols. You can follow Josh on Twitter at Josh_Ward. You can catch him on Josh and Swain, 99.1 The Sports Animal, noon to 3, Monday through Friday. Josh, busy times right now. What's going on?
Yeah, very busy. I do feel like the topics are busier than September, October, and November during the football season. It's the beauty of college football.
Yeah, no doubt. A couple of big things have happened in recent weeks. Again, time of this recording, by the time this airs, unfortunately, more things can happen. But Defensive backs, a run to the transfer portal. Is this as concerning as it looks on paper? Because it looks bad on paper, but I'm trying to remind everybody, like, in a normal year, half these guys would have been done with eligibility to begin with. I mean, the COVID year is just, I mean, it's still here.
Yeah, the extra eligibility that players have creates a math problem because each school only has so many scholarships available, and Tennessee's actually at a number 2 below, most likely at 83 is where they would project for this upcoming season instead of 85, which is not a real problem in terms of what the roster will be from a depth standpoint, but something has to give. Somebody has to go. They have to have players enter the transfer portal or just move on for whatever reason if the numbers are going to fit with the players they're bringing in through traditional recruiting, plus some players that are coming back. Tennessee has several that have decided to stay. Well, they have to count on the scholarship number, plus some players that Tennessee will bring in by transfer. So overall, I think it's pretty normal what Tennessee has experienced. They do have some players that have to be replaced, assuming Tyler Barron does not change his mind and play football at Tennessee next season on the defensive line. He's somebody that has to be replaced. He's somebody that was productive. They do have options on the defensive line, though, to help replace Tyler Barron. In the defensive backfield, most of those guys were not going to factor in to the defensive backfield next season. Tamarion McDonald and Nico Slaughter could have. I would also say that they are, for the most part, at a replaceable level. Now it's going to be up to some young players who will have more of an opportunity next season and potential transfer help. So it's to be determined what the defensive backfield will look like in 2023, but that would have been the case if Nico Slaughter and Tamarion McDonald had announced they're returning to Tennessee for next season, for 2024, I should say.
Josh, in the short term though, I'm looking at this at least at cornerback, and you're going to have Gabe Jeudy-Lally, who I believe is going to play in this bowl game, and then you're going to have Ricky Gibson or Jordan Matthews or Christian Conyer. I mean, those are your cornerbacks, and that's it. So sure, I mean, you feel better about those guys having a whole off season and having fall camp and spring practice and all that to get ready. But I mean, Iowa, which again is not setting records offensively. You got to have somebody.
They kind of are,
just
from a negative standpoint.
Yeah, there you go. But does the fact that, I mean, honestly, like, you don't want to take anybody for granted or anything, or overlook anybody, but I think the fact that Tennessee's going up against an offense in Iowa, knowing that they're on scholarship too and they can make plays, but I mean, it's not a very potent offense. If there's ever a game that you want to break in some freshman cornerbacks, it might be this one.
It might be. This can go multiple ways. The young guys could go out there and get some more playing time in the bowl game. We didn't see much of them this season. Ricky Gibson had some quality snaps along the way, but that was really it from the 23 class that we talked about a lot. There was big anticipation for those guys getting on campus. I think most of us, you and I included, had some skepticism about how much the freshmen would actually play versus veterans that the coaching staff knew, and that's how it turned out. They didn't get much playing time. Now they get it. So if they go out there and play well enough, that's something to build on heading into next season. I still believe that's more of a narrative thing than anything of real substance, because the bigger test is coming next season. The flip side would be, what if Iowa goes out there and plays better than it has most of the season on offense? Again, back to the narrative, it can create concern about where they are. I don't know what it means for next season, but several of these players just didn't get much opportunity. It created redshirt opportunity, I suppose, but in terms of playing, we don't know. And we're not really going to know what this secondary will look like until they actually hit the field next year. It will be one of the biggest questions of the offseason, just like the secondary has been one of the biggest questions for Tennessee over the last several off seasons. Josh,
how big is it that Nico's going to have 2 experienced offensive tackles back next year? Gerald Mincy, re-ups to the Vol Club. He made that official on Monday night. And he had been leaning that he was going to come back, the redshirt junior. John Campbell, of course, last Monday night at like 9:47, put out that incredible video that we talked about last week. So Nico, first-year starting quarterback next year, is going to have at least 2 experienced tackles. And Josh, by the looks of things, again, it's not official yet at the time of this recording, but we think Cooper Mays is going to be back. We think Javonte Spraggins is going to be back. I mean, this offensive line had its issues last year at times, but I mean, if I'm Nico, I'm saying, all right, let's run it back. Everybody, come on. I mean, this sets up pretty well for a young quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's net positive to have
Yeah.
experience back, guys that have played in the SEC or Power 5 level, in John Campbell's case, having played at Miami, but guys that have also played for this coaching staff. So John Campbell will have a better understanding of the offense and have more time with Glenn Ellerby, the offensive line coach. And then across the board, if our assumptions are correct on the interior of the offensive line, that's more time for those guys to have played together. I don't know what the entire upside is because Mincy needs to be better. Campbell needs to be better. They need to be more reliable. I think that's pretty safe to say after this past season. But also, if they were moving on, wouldn't it be one of our biggest concerns for Tennessee next season? How
Oh,
Tennessee
yeah.
is replacing those players. So that's why I think it's net positive for sure, especially if we're correct in that Spraggins returns and Cooper Mays makes that decision to come back, because Mays is a preseason All-SEC guy, I think, next season. Spraggins has played so much at Tennessee and is a reliable player. And then we'll see about left guard. Is it Carrick? Is it another transfer that can come in? They at least probably need some more competition at that spot. So is it a top 3 to 5 offensive line in the SEC next year? Maybe. I don't know that. But the concern if these guys were leaving, as we kind of suspected 3 or 4 months ago, is lessened. And that's a good thing for a young quarterback who's taking over.
If you're Josh Heupel, how are you handling the transfer portal right now? I think it's pretty evident they are channeling in on tight ends. Maybe by the time of this recording hits the air, maybe there's a tight end already committed. I think a tight end is going to jump in pretty soon. Point is, they're putting the full court press on Holden Stays of Notre Dame, Jordan Dingle of Kentucky, Bowers Sharp is in that mix as well from Southeast Louisiana. How would you go about bringing a tight end in numbers wise, and then what other positions are you hitting? Like, where does Tennessee need help the most via the portal?
So tight end is obvious. I don't think we have to dive too deep based on what Tennessee has already told us.
I mean, you're
based
replacing
on
the
their
guy from Farragut. I mean that's a tall task.
We don't have enough time on this show for the rest of the week to talk about what Tennessee is losing in Jacob Warren. He was a very important player with our Farragut joking. But to lose him and McAllen Castles, I mean, that's two guys. Those were the two players. And we went into the season saying, yeah, depth is kind of a concern. Fortunately, they were able to stay healthy throughout the season. So they need help there. I would still be looking for an offensive lineman to come in and help. We don't know anything about the high school level players that have been recruited to this point, either guys that are on campus or the incoming freshman class. And maybe there's big development, but again, it's a question mark right now. I would be looking for a wide receiver that can come in and help. With this secondary conversation, how can you not be looking for somebody that can come in and help at corner? Maybe somebody that you're comfortable playing man on the defensive side with more confidence. So at least one defensive back, tight end is obvious, at least one offensive lineman, help at wide receiver. I still think finding a veteran quarterback that would be willing to come in and be a backup would be of value. So I'm not talking about the Dylan Gabriel level quarterbacks out there. I'm not talking about Kyle McCord, who would be available at least at the time of this conversation. Not that level player, but somebody who's been in college, who understands he would be a backup, maybe wants to be a coach in the future and wants to learn from this coaching staff, just because of the limited number of scholarship players they have at that position.
And again, that's why I continue to say, if Gaston Moore wants to come back and play another year because he has another year of eligibility, Josh Heupel will say, come on down. Because again, he very well could start out as your backup quarterback next year, depending on if you don't get anybody else, and if Jake Merklinger's not where you feel comfortable with him at this point in time. So,
week 1 or 2. Let's say it's week 2 against NC State on a neutral field, and something happens to Nico. I would imagine there's a good chance the coaching staff would have more confidence in Gaston Moore, a player they've known for half a decade, versus a freshman who's had no playing time.
Yep, no doubt. And orange and white game hero, baby. People wondering why he's not getting a look to be the starter. Well, again, it's the orange and white game. But hey, I think Gaston Moore's a great asset on this team. We'll see if he comes back.
Would be good for the
another
room.
year.
At the very least, would be good for the quarterback room, film
sure.
study, meetings, all of those conversations.
For sure. Just like you are good for the room over there on the staff meetings on Wednesday mornings at 99.1 The Sports Animal. What you got coming up? You and Swain, you're Josh, up on the show this week, noon to 3.
Yeah, we're rocking and rolling with the transfer portal conversation, a little bit with the bowl game, but it takes it's third row seating in the conversation of what's happening with recruiting, signing day a week from now. A lot of basketball talk, the sleigh ride every Tuesday for an hour with Ron Slay, Tennessee basketball legend, plus the Josh and Swain newsletter. It's free every Friday morning in your email inbox. So give me a boost. Go sign up to the Josh and Swain newsletter.
And you can sign up for that Josh and Swain newsletter in the show notes of this episode, both on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Josh, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eric.